Thanks, Bea. So, welcome everyone to the second roundtable from the International Conference on Water and Sustainability. Today we will discuss the different views and approaches on the future of water management, from critical perspectives about water commodification and financialization to less well-known approaches such as ecofeminism. These 2-hour sessions will be divided in 3 sections. In the first section, we will have an introduction by Pedro Arrojo and Maud Barlow. This introduction will last the first half an hour, so till 10. In the second part, we'll move towards a round table of experiences with Miriam Planas, Edurne Berger, and unfortunately, today we couldn't have Satoko Kishimoto. They will present both an ecofeminist approach from ESF and also a public communitarian management model stemming from the case of Terrassa. And finally, in the last section of the session, we will open the debate with all of our speakers. Importantly, you can share your thoughts, your comments, your questions through the chat. And also, if you want to give your voice directly, so if you want to ask questions directly to our participants to the round table, you can also raise your hand and we will open your microphone. So let's start by I'm sorry, I'm listening a microphone, so if technical services can close one of these microphones so that we can listen well our speakers. So let's move to the first section of the roundtable. As I said, Pedro Rojo will start. Pedro Rojo has a PhD in physical sciences and is emeritus professor from the University of Zaragoza. He started the creation of the Foundation on New Culture of Water and promoted many mobilizations against the Ebro transfer. In addition, he was the first Spaniard to receive the Goldman Prize for the Environment in the European category. And he has been appointed the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the human right of access to water and sanitation. He will now present us the future perspectives and challenges for the human right to water and sanitation according to his experience. So Pedro, the floor is yours. You have 20 minutes to share with us your thoughts.
Thank you very much. Well, perhaps first of all, I would like to explain. Well, for me, this appointment is, as you know, I think most of you, is a huge honor, but at the same time, a challenge as overwhelming as it is exciting for me. So I'm in the way. With I just begin from the 1st November, so excuse me, I have to learn a lot already, and I try to listen all the complex world of the UN system that I cannot believe how complex it is, and well, how rich it is also. But in any case, I'm in the way. As you know, perhaps, well, we have the rapporteur. We have to elaborate and to present 2 thematic reports every year. So I will explain to you what are my first thematic reports in order to know what is my point of view and my, at least at the beginning of my mandate, my priorities. I will explain to you also my concerns, and I think this can help to explain the profile, the perspective, the objectives of my mandate, and then also my point of view on the situation we are, the objectives we must follow or try to get, and this will be my introduction for this event. Well, my first thematic report will be presented before the Council, the Human Rights Council in Geneva. I think it's in September. It will be a focus on my mandate planning. But first of all, I would like to explain and to analyze the context in which I have to work, we have to work, not just for the near future, but for the medium and long term also. It is, from my point of view, we face our tragic and at the same time paradoxical crisis, the global water crisis on the water planet, the blue planet. When we talk about these 2.2 billion people without access to safe drinking water, there is no doubt about the first part of this lemma or this title, the global water crisis. Of course, no one discusses on this. As with the climate change, there is at present general consensus on this. But perhaps if we talk in this provocative way, talking about the water planet, in fact, I'm criticizing in some way the analysis or the diagnosis focus on scarcity. And I will explain it. I need to explain it. Of course, there is scarcity depending on where and when. I don't deny, of course, this reality. But when we talk about these 2.2 billion people without access to safe drinking water, the problem is not properly scarcity. In fact, these 2.2 billion people are not properly thirsty people without water around their surrounding, the space where they live, they are living. No, I think, I'm sure these 2.2 billion people are in the majority, the vast majority are 2.2 billion impoverished people living next to polluted river, polluted source or aquifer. So this is the reality. So in fact, my analysis, my diagnosis, the core, the main, the central core of this global crisis, we have to look for the roots in the confluence of two major critical structural flaws. The flaw of unsustainability that we have produced in our aquatic ecosystems. In fact, we have transformed the water as the key of the life we know into the vector, the most terrible the disease and death vector that we'd ever known in the humanity. So this is the question for me. We are in the middle of in the confluence of these two critical flaws. The first one is the flaw of unsustainability, and the second one is the flaw of inequity and poverty. And then we have, of course, several factors that aggravate and accelerate this crisis. The first one for me is the pressure and the impact of the financialization of life, the vision of financialization of life promoted by the most radical neoliberal vision that leads to the commodification of water and the privatization of services, considering the water as a scarce and useful resource. And in this sense, they defend, of course, that they press for considering water as a simple economic good that must be managed through the logic of market. But in this way, the core of the crisis we talked before is the core. These 2.2 billion people, we are transforming through this process of privatization of services and commodification of water. We are transforming citizens into clients, customers. So this, the core of the problem, the core of the crisis, these 2.2 billion people is transformed in 2.2 billion billion of impoverished clients that cannot afford for the services. So instead of confronting, instead of facing and solving the big problem, the crisis, I think we are aggravating and deepening the crisis in the way that we are transforming, we are making more vulnerable the ones who were before already vulnerable. So in this sense, this is perhaps not the origin of the crisis, but is an accelerator, and this factor is deepening and accelerating the crisis. The second one, of course, is climate change. Climate change, for me, I used to make a comment. We have got at present nearly, we can say, a huge consensus, general consensus, not only in the scientific community, but also society, around the origin of this climate change. And we agree, we have the consensus on that the energy vector is the main one to generate the crisis. And in this sense, no doubt, no discussion about the fact that the mitigation strategies must be presided by the energy transition, okay? No problem. But I don't hear too much about the fact, I'm convinced that the main affection, the main vector of social affection is the water vector. And in this sense, I think that the how do you say that the strategies the strategies for adaptation, the adaptation strategy, excuse me, I'm overwhelmed these days. The adaptation strategy must be presided by the water transition, energy transition, water transition towards a new water culture, is my point of view. And in this sense, for me, is essential this new water culture deal, among other things, among other questions, we need to make peace with our rivers and aquatic ecosystems. Well, this is with respect to climate change, second accelerator. And the third one, of course, is COVID-19. For me, COVID-19, of course, is no problem. It increases the same as climate change is increasing and deepening the economic crisis and developing poverty, increasing poverty, and expanding poverty and inequity. So, of course, this is another accelerator. But I would like to make a comment, but because I think it's important for the message that we need to launch at present and to take some advantage of the lessons that COVID-19 is giving to us. Is with respect to the fact that COVID-19 has discovered, has made evident our vulnerability as human beings. Even we cannot protect ourselves because we are rich. Of course, the impoverished people have stronger impacts, but even the most rich people can be infected. And the borders are not useful. COVID-19, the virus is traveling around the world in business class. No? So in this sense, we are discovering, even not just because of reasons of justice, but because of being just for efficacy and efficiency, the need to react together without leaving no one behind. No? In this sense, I think we have more and more a huge consensus on the need of reinforcing the public health systems. From my point of view, in this point, we need to ask that water and sanitation is a key issue, a key basic issue of basic for the public health. So in this sense, I think this huge consensus on reinforcing the public health system, and remember, public health system for everybody is a big effort, collective effort, with big investments, huge investments, but without any profit expectation. We have no expectation of profit. The profit is to keep, to have, to protect the health for everybody without leaving no one behind, as the main principle of United Nations with respect to human rights. So in this sense, I think we have to integrate water and sanitation, asking for the same approach and the same way of thinking and the same efforts we want to do with respect to systems, to health, public health systems. Well, this was a reflection. With respect to the second thematic report, for me, will be focused on the impacts and risks of commodification of water, and very specifically commodification and speculation in water. Of course, the reason is that you have said, and I suppose Maud Barlow will develop it, the new that we have known that water enter in the future markets of Wall Street. But future markets is not just a space of market, on the logic of market. Is the main logic that we have in these spaces is speculation logic. And in this sense is not just the offer and demand, but is another logic, is a logic that goes beyond the market logic. So for me, it's very, very dangerous. In fact, and it will be my second report before the General Assembly of the United Nations, I think in October, New York. I think it's important to understand what happened. It's not just an ideological question, but an empiric reality that we have to know. What happened with these future markets in 2008, when the bubble, the speculative bubble in 2008 came out and reventó, estalló. So in that moment, the future markets from years before, the big financial institutions have entered, have the permission to entering and acting in this space market, and so we are talking about banks, we are talking about hedge funds that are not interested in producing the products, not interested nor in commercialization, in selling or managing these products. They are just interested in gathering, in getting future rights for these products, and then pushing the prices up until they sell the rights to others after winning a lot of money. The example is food products, basic food products in 2008, when at the same time that the banks received billions of dollars and dollars from the public sector, from public money, they identify the future markets of food products as a good space for dealing with it, good business, and so more than $350 billion were invested in some months in this space for food, and in a short period, few months, wheat, for instance, price will increase, multiplying the price for 500% increasing. And United Nations estimated that 250 million people, new people came into the how do you say, hambre? Oh, excuse me, I'm so tired. Hunger. in hungry people around the world, 2050 100 people, no million, 250 million people new hungry people. So this cannot be the space for dealing with water, and this is why I am suggesting, I'm proposing, and it is, I think I have consumed my time, I am proposing, I think it was good to have this discussion on the 22nd March around the values in plural of water, not just the value, the financial value of water, or the economic value, the productive value, but the values of water. Because I used to say water has the main characteristic to have very different utilities, and different utilities in different levels, ethical levels of priority. So we need to discuss on ethical principles for dealing with water management. And I propose, I have published recently, the 22nd, a report, not a report, a statement on what ethics and ethical principles for water management. And I propose to make the difference between the uses that we can consider in the space of water for life, the space of water for uses and services of public interest, the space for water for economic development, okay, and the space of crime water in illegitimate uses that must be not allowed, but illegitimate that was out of the law and prohibited. So this is my approach. I think I will try to explain more and to develop in the discussion with everybody these different levels. And at the end, this complex approach, this complex space of different values of water, market is just not able to understand. It's not possible. It's not just a perverse approach, but it's not the right way to be, because water is not able to understand and to measure and to deal with values, a reality so complex a reality. So I think water finally is something complex that must be managed on the democratic a democratic approach. I used to mention this sentence so nice from the Italians, no, the Acqua Pubblica Italiana, when they say water in Spanish. I used to say se escribe agua, se lee democracia. We write water, but we read democracy. I agree with this. And this democracy, this new governance approach, for democratic approach worldwide, I think must be presided by a human rights-based approach as the core of this global democratic approach, this global democratic challenge that we need to develop. And in this sense, I think United Nations is, for the near future, more and more urgent to have a very active role in developing this water democracy on the human rights-based approach. So I think this is my perspective, and well, a lot of work to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pedro, for your inspiring talk and letting us know your promising roadmap in the UN. For sure, in the discussion, we will develop some of the concepts and some of the strategies you have mentioned. And now let's move to Maud Barlow. Maud Barlow is a Canadian activist and writer. She is the former chairperson of the Council of Canadians and co-founder of the Blue Planet Project. She also chairs the board of the Washington-based Food and Water Watch and is a founding member of the San Francisco-based International Forum on Globalization and the World Future Council. She served as senior advisor on water in the United Nations General Assembly and was the leader in the campaign to have water recognized as human right. She is the author of almost 20 books, and due to time zone differences, today Maud will not be with us synchronically, but she has kindly shared this video, a short video of 5 minutes, to introduce some of the topics that Pedro has already talked about, and particularly about financialization and the commodification of water. So please, could you start the video? Yeah, thank you very much.
Hola everyone, hi, it's Maud from Canada. Sorry not to be joining you in person, but we're near meeting, it's the middle of my night and it's still winter here. We still have snow. I'm delighted to be with you, a bunch of friends and allies from so many years celebrating World Water Day and our fight to protect water as a human right. I've been fighting water commodification, I guess, from day one. When I first learned about what water was about, it wasn't an environmental issue for me at the time. It was that it was included in the very first of the modern free trade agreements between Canada and the US as a tradable good, and then carried on being that in the North American Free Trade Agreement. And I can remember thinking, this is way back in 1985, how could water be a tradable good? And that set me on a journey against the commodification, privatization of water, which hasn't stopped to this day. There are so many forms, as you know, privatization of services, which started with Margaret Thatcher and the World Bank, etc. We all know the story. Satoko has good news on remunicipalizations. The good news continues to come in. As we learn about privatization, communities say no to it. Of course, there's the continued bottled water fight. If you took all the empty bottles of plastic bottles of water the world drinks in a year, they go halfway to the sun. It's got to stop, and we know it. Water trading, which we have, for instance, in Australia, where they converted the licenses to water rights, and people actually buy and sell, and the prices went up through the roof. Investors came in, foreign investors came in, and the government couldn't buy back its water when it needed it. This is a really bad and a very dangerous model, and we need to be very aware of it. There's water trading, water pollution trading, which is started in the US, which is basically the right to trade or buy your way out of, or being allowed to continue to pollute a water source, which is its own form of water privatization. There's water extraction pollution, a mining company or big energy companies. In Canada, the previous government brought in a policy where a mining company can actually ask the government to rename a lake, no longer a lake, therefore it's no longer protected by the water laws, as a tailings impoundment area so that they can dump their toxic waste in it. That is a form of privatization, legal privatization. And then, of course, most recently, we've got the water futures trading in the US, where Wall Street is now getting involved in putting water and water assets on the open market like oil and gas. And basically, the financialization of water is a little different, of course, in that you're not bidding on the actual water, you're bidding on the asset in the future. And what they're doing is they're bidding on scarcity. They know that the more scarce water is, the more profit they can make from it, and they are actually bidding on and gambling on and profiteering from the global crisis on water. So there are many of us coming together to fight this hard, and this is one we really have to work together on to say no to. And by the way, we really have built a powerful global water justice movement, and we are more and more in touch with each other all the time. I just want to say two things in closing. One is to say thank you, a special thank you to Pedro, our new special rapporteur on the human right to water and sanitation, who has made the financialization of water as a natural capital the central to his mandate, and I'm deeply grateful. I think it's the exact right way to go, and we need to work together on this. And then just a note of great hope, and that is, and I've just finished a book on hope for activists, hope and activism. And that is the Blue Communities Project. Blue Communities started in Canada. We had a government that was trying to force water privatization on municipalities. And so we thought we're going to get to the municipalities first and get them to pledge not to go that route. And as you know, they also phase out bottled water. They also promise to protect water as a human right. Some in Europe went much further and did public education and promised not to promote public-private partnerships in the Global South, but public-public partnerships. Some really exciting things have come out of this. And we now have over almost 25 million people living in official Blue community municipalities around the world. And we have faith-based groups. The World Council of Churches is a Blue community. We have many education institutions, unions, and so on. It's my dream that we're going to go blue one community at a time. We need this counter movement, and we need it to be based on hope and a vision that's positive, because people need that right now. We will fight and beat the commodification of water, because it's not just around human rights, but if we lose control of a water system itself, if it is owned or controlled by the private sector, we can't protect the water source itself, on which we all depend for life. So thank you so much for letting me be part of this, for being my friends and allies and people I trust and count on. We've built a great movement here, and we're not going to stop. Lovely to see you. Happy World Water Day.
So, as you see, Maud could join us remotely. This is one of the beautiful things of having these digital tools that to share the knowledge between us and different continents without the need of producing greenhouse emissions. Let's move to the second part of this session. As I said, Satoko Kishimoto could not join us because she's unfortunately sick. She apologized her absence, and she wished to take part to this roundtable. But at least let me share with you a couple of updates that for her were very important to share in this roundtable. The first one is the report on reclaiming public services, how cities and citizens are turning back privatization. And the second one is the international database of the privatized public services. You can have a look to this database at publicfutures.org. And there you can check by different sectors, for instance, water or energy. And also you can check for different levels. So for instance, remunicipalizations at the national level also. And according to this database, for instance, the last update is that there are over 300 cases of water remunicipalization all over the world. So probably we will discuss a little bit more on that in the discussion. Now let's move to Miriam Planas. Thank you very much for joining also the debate today. Miriam Planas is a chemical engineer specialized in water treatment and sustainability. She's a member of Engineers Without Borders, and she has worked in the campaign of water as a right and not a commodity. She also is the spokesperson from the platform Agua's Vida and the movement for public and democratic water. She also participates in the Public Water Network and the European Water Movement. And she's also a member of the committee boards of the Association of Municipalities and Entities for Public Water and the Directive Committee of the Global Water Partnership Alliance. So Miriam, the floor is yours. You have about 20 minutes to present to do your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mar. I hope you can hear me well. If not, just let me know with the macro because I can with the presentation. Um, Thank you, Pedro and Maud, for the previous presentations. I think they set up the global context in where we are right now. My presentation wants to draft and to share a new approach we've just recently developed um, uh, around the municipalization of water and ecofeminism. We recently launched a publication called Towards an Eco-Feminist Water Politics, uh, which wants to
Sorry,
be
Miriam,
yeah.
sorry, Miriam, could you be a little bit more louder because I have problems to listen you and probably the rest of the participants. So just
Now, Mar, without
yes,
the...
now perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So I will share today a little insight on this new publication we just recently launched in this March. First of all, I wanted to share where we come from. In Engineering Without Borders, we've been running a water advocacy campaign for about 15 years, and we come from this human right to water and sanitation perspective and the global justice perspective. We are part of this movement Maud was talking about, this global movement, and we've been learning from Latin America for so many years, since the early 2000s, when all the movements around the world were claiming for the human right to water and sanitation recognition. And we've been also working during 10 years applying this human right to water and sanitation approach, and seeing which are the impacts of privatization, mainly focusing on privatization, first studying it in the global south, which were the impacts of privatization in Latin America, and then studying the remunicipalization processes in Latin America. And then we started applying this remunicipalization approach, which we learned from Latin America, from France, to Catalonia. So I wanted to share, first of all, a little bit of the context of the remunicipalization in Catalonia, because I think it helps to understand where this proposal of ecofeminist approach comes from. And finally, I will talk about this draft, or this contribution of the ecofeminist approach, which wants to serve as a basis in order to start discussing and thinking about new narratives that can help us to name the things that movements are already doing. No, but we sometimes need this a framework that help us putting a name and talking about it. So first of all, I was with a platform after many years studying these Latin America remunicipalization processes and privatizations, and working with this global water justice movement. In 2012, Engineering Without Borders, together with Ecologistas en Acción and many other associations in Catalonia, started I Was With a platform, which was inspired in this conception from the movements in Latin America, which brings, and that was why the name was chosen. No, we said water is life, water means life, which was maybe not an approach which was very used in the global north. And this platform, the main lemma, as the Italians use the one that Pedro mentioned, we use the water is life, not a commodity, and we work mainly into lines. First, in an urban context, promoting remunicipalization campaign, and the second one is work in an ecosystem protection, with an ecosystem protection perspective to protect quality and quantity of water in rivers, lakes, aquifers, and all types of water ecosystems. So this platform brings together these two perspectives, which one comes from the human right to water movement and the other one comes from the ecologist movement, and start working about 10 years ago with these two lines of work. And what was the context that we found out? No, when the platform was created, we started looking at what was happening in Catalonia with the water privatization, because we learned that Aguas de Barcelona, Agua, Suez, was working in Latin America it was involved in many privatization processes, and then the surprise was come to Barcelona and to Catalonia and find out that they also had the monopoly of water management here in Catalonia. And we found out that 80% of Catalans were supplied by private operators, and from these 80% of Catalans, more than 70% were supplied by companies which were participated or owned by Agbar Suez. So there was a monopoly, no, in Catalonia of water, and it belonged to this transnational Suez. And on the other side, we found out there was a lack of information about it, because all the information was concentrated in their hands. Aguas Vida sent letters to all the cities in Catalonia, which are 900, to ask for some information around the water, the contracts, and which companies were running water in every city, and when the contracts were expiring. Thanks to this letter, we found out that private contracts in more than 150 cities in Catalonia were expiring or were about to expire between 2015 and 2025. So this gave us a window of opportunity to recover water into public hands. That's why in 2015, Aguas Vida ran a campaign to promote remunicipalization, and this campaign and these processes have not been easy. We have 28 remunicipalizations so far in Catalonia since 2010. This is a really, really huge number, because the processes are difficult. The power imbalance between the cities and the company is strong. And from these 28 remunicipalizations in Catalonia, there are about 40 city councils that have been brought to court by the private operator because they have public water management, or they are remunicipalizing their services. So there is an open conflict between the democratic decisions from plenaries in the cities and the interest of this private operator. This context of remunicipalization, it's not isolated in Catalonia, even though it is an interesting case because of the concentration of the privatization. But as Mar was saying, this is a global tendency around the world. You can find information in this global database, but Satoko updated us this week that with water there are 333 remunicipalizations around the world. And some of the biggest, the most recent biggest ones are Lyon and Bordeaux in France. And just to remind some other important remunicipalizations, Paris was remunicipalized 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And in Spain, Valladolid is the biggest municipalization. And in Catalonia, Terrassa is the biggest one, but Edurne, we will talk about that after me. So we just some of the strategies that we are using in Catalonia to build community control and to fight for these remunicipalizations, to promote these remunicipalizations. The first one was to promote transparency and data in order to everyone have the information that was hidden. The second one is what has been reclaiming human right to water and sanitation with the Alliance Against Energy Poverty, which is a social movement which fights to empower affected people by water and energy cutoffs and promote to defend their own rights. The third one is the local platforms that we find around all the territory, citizen platforms that reclaim this public water for their cities. And the fourth one would be proposing next models, such as the Terrassa Water Observatory, which Edurne will talk more about. And the fifth one is one that we've learned from this global justice movement and networks, which is building alliances with other actors, such as cities, water operators, social movements, unions, and this is helping us to change and to make it to change this power imbalance that exists between cities and private operators and social movements. So this is the context of remunicipalization in Catalonia, and this is where the starting point where we started thinking about ecofeminism. So the question now is why we started thinking that ecofeminism can maybe the hypothesis is that maybe ecofeminism can give us a framework, a theoretical framework where all these strategies can be explained or narrated, And the thing is that during all these years, applying human right to water and sanitation approach and also working with ecologist movements, what we've seen is that nature is one of the most affected by this privatization and this patriarchal and capitalist approach, but also women are the most affected, not only in the global south, but we have also some evidence that in the global north, it's also women the most affected when we don't have our human right to water and sanitation guaranteed. It's not easy to find evidence because we don't have disaggregated data by gender or other intersectionalities. But the few data we find, and also the Alliance Against Energy Poverty, which is run mostly by women, show us evidence that also in the global north, the most affected by this system, by privatization, by when the human right to water and sanitation is not guaranteed, are women. And here in the presentation, I put a tweet and some videos that were launched on December when the Spanish government decided to stop the ban of water and energy cutoffs. And the Alliance Against Energy Poverty, together with the Spanish Public Water Network, start a campaign to reclaim back this ban of water and energy cutoffs. And these women made some videos explaining why they needed this. They raised their voice to explain why they needed this ban and why was it needed to be guaranteed the human right to water and sanitation and the energy right. So one of our ideas when we started this analysis was to try to think also an ecofeminism that can fit in our cities, because we've learned a lot from ecofeminists in the global south. We have a lot of narratives that explain how nature and how women are oppressed there, but we don't have as much narratives as there are in the global south, in the global north. And our intuition said that something was also here, and something could be analyzed and worked to try to have also an ecofeminist approach here. So I am not an expert in ecofeminism, I have to say, but I will try to explain some of the ideas that we have proposed with this study that we have made together with La Hydra Cooperative. First of all, before entering the report, just share some insights about which ecofeminism we are talking about. The term ecofeminism was born in the 70s between the confluence of these two theoretical and practical movements, the ecology and the feminism, but there have been different currents, and the one we are more, the one we start from is the one which is more materialistic ecofeminism, and wants to show the connection between these parallel oppressions that women and nature receive, analyzing the causes of oppression that patriarchy and capitalism exert, and especially emphasizing that capitalism could have never existed without the expropriation of resources of the commons, or nor the invisibility of and the exploitation of reproductive labor. So ecofeminism and the commons are directly related, and the ecofeminism has always advocated for the commons as life-sustaining elements. So it is therefore not surprising that the ecofeminism was born in the 1980s, when there was a great plunder of the commons and a great advance of privatization. So what ecofeminism tells us is that women are the ones who manage the resources. Women are the ones who have suffered the main violence in the dispossession processes, and they are the ones that know that the survival of their communities depend on these resources, and the ones who maintain and reproduce social relations of their communities. And also we see how women are the ones are the protagonists in defending the resources such as water. All these statements which ecofeminism does, we believe have also evidence in the global north, and we need to start talking about these new narratives. So I will share with you some of the principles and criteria. In this study, more than analyzing the causes, we try to do a proposal of how could be this new narrative of ecofeminism and water politics. And we made 3 study questions. What does it mean to ecofeminize water policy? Because we have this reference from the global south and Latin America, but how do we look at the north, and where the relation with water is different, because we are not depending so much. We have the tap water, so our relationship is different than in many places of the global south that Pedro was talking about. What are the political dimensions of ecofeminism that we can apply? And also we look at what can we learn from the experiences already exist. This study was made by La Hydra, as I mentioned, and they proposed 4 core ideas, principles, and criteria. And these 4 ideas are economy for life, ecodependence, knowledge located, and community public governance. So with these 4 core ideas, there are some principles for each idea and some criteria that we believe can open the debate and can help us to analyze if the politics of water that we make are getting nearer this ecofeminist approach or they are far away. So when we talk about economics for life, we mean changing this logic of commodification that Maud and Pedro were talking for the logic of sustainability and life. And also change the old politics for new water politics, where the old politics of water were aiming to resolve this water scarcity, this water shortage, but with politics of offering more water. We live in a model of intensification of consumption, which makes that this offer would never stop. We need to think about new politics which address the demand and address also consumption. That means that we start thinking water for who and water for what, no? And this led us to a new dimension of the water cycle, where the social, environmental, and technical economic dimensions are included. And also moving from a business to customer model to a public citizen relationship model. There is also a need to increase technological investment with the impact in the community and the commons, better maintenance of infrastructure, great proximity, so as not to depend on global markets, and a politics of responsible procurement that include criteria of equity, progressive tariff policies, and are done with criteria also of care, community, and non-profit. Also, and last of this point, there is a need to build these alliances which allow us to create economies of scale and share knowledge. The second core idea is eco-dependence, and this wants to put in the center that interdependence as the basis of human relations and the environment, because these interdependencies have become invisible, and there is a need to put some light on it and show us that we are interdependent from nature. Nature is interdependent from us, and also to have an approach where the consequences of climate change are not addressed equally, but needs to be addressed also depending on the responsibility of each part in the contribution to this climate change. Also, it talks about the need of change of values and habits in the citizenship, and to restore the link between water, environment, and the citizens, because we have disconnected from these values and this water in many urban areas. It also advocates that this difficulty to address the direct contact of citizens with water in urban areas might be addressed by a public service with participation and collaboration of citizens, which can help us recover this link between nature and people. Also, it claims for a need to change from the perspective of water operators or service operators to ecosystem companies, which have the aim to regenerate and sustain life and ecosystems. The fourth one is the third one, sorry, was called, we called it situated knowledge. And ecofeminism movement has questioned the role of technology and how the knowledge is produced. So knowledge has been traditionally produced in North, usually by white men, with Eurocentric and androcentric vision. So this needs to be addressed. Even climate change has been conceived this way. So this model proposed spaces where expert and non-expert knowledge are linked. This is something that Terrassa has already implemented. And in the Water Observatory of Terrassa, Edurne will explain it better, but the public, the institution, the educational community, and the university, and the social movements have some spaces of collaboration. And there is a need also to research and develop innovative methodologies which allow us to interact scientific world with social movements and the public. As for example, an example could be to agree on the research questions or to find ways to incorporate different perspectives to this traditional expert knowledge. There is also a need to have continuous training and education for all the stakeholders involved. And just to end, the last core idea is public community governance. This ecofeminist framework proposes a new way of managing these public services, a new way which is already being applied by social movements here in Catalonia and some other places in the world. But in this sense, the experiences of municipalization open new imaginaries to be able to create new community public institutions, which include spaces of participation or goes to a co-responsibility with the citizens. So in this sense, there is a need to address this new and old political tension, which I'm sure Edurne will explain better, and change some dynamics of forms of participation to understand each other and to be able to create new public management models. It's important to explain there will not be a single formula to do that. There will be many of them. We will have different models, but these processes are important because open the door to innovation in community public institutionalization. And last but not least, it is important that we gather experience on how to incorporate this ecofeminist perspective into organizations or organisms that we create in order not to reproduce gender inequalities, racial inequalities, which we cannot assume that we incorporate diversity and non-discrimination without specific mechanisms, because this is not going to happen. We need to think about these specific mechanisms which help us to address these issues. So basically, it's important and necessary to expand the margins of local democracy and at the same time make possible a network with other experiences and territories to promote and guarantee mechanisms of citizen control. So this is the proposal that talks about things that might seem a little bit utopian, but the truth is that movements here in Catalonia, Edurne will explain the Terrassa experience, are already experiencing and putting in practice these ideas. So the idea of this study is only to name it and to frame it into a theoretical framework that allow us to start discussing and to start thinking how this ecofeminist politics could look like. Thank you, and I will leave it here.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you very much, Miriam, for sharing with us and summarizing some of the results of this interesting study. For sure, we will talk a little bit more on that and elaborate it. And now let's move to Edurne Beguer, the last speaker, and after her, we'll move to the debate. As I mentioned it in the beginning, please, if you have questions, comments, you can share them in the chat, and we'll bring them to the speakers. Edurne Beguer, as Miriam was already anticipated us, will talk about the case of Terrassa, the Terrassa Water Observatory. She has a PhD in social anthropology from the Center of Research and Social Studies in Social Anthropology from Mexico. Her doctoral thesis was based on the process of remunicipalization of water in the case of Terrassa, and she has published several studies and articles on social models and forms of water management, on institutions and water as a commons, and the relationships between democracy, commons, and sustainability. So Edurne, the floor is yours. You have about 15-20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I share my screen. You can see? Okay, well, good morning to all. And first, I would like to thank you for the possibility of being at this roundtable today. Today I'm here on behalf of the OIT, on behalf of its current president, Bea Escribano, we couldn't here today. And I'm going to focus the presentation of the OIT in relation of the future of water management from ecological and social sustainability. Okay, I want to clarify, I'm going to refer to Terrassa's Water Observatory by its acronym in Catalan or in Spanish, OIT, que és equivalent a Observatori de l'Aigua de Terrassa. Okay. Okay, the OIT and the future of water management. As I said, the OIT is an experience that contains fundamental elements to be a proposal for a future model, at least for 4 reasons in resume, no, it's synthesized. One is it's the result of the fight for the decommodification of water and the recovery, the control. It's based on water as a common, and this translates into a deep reformulation of the entire urban water services structure, but also of the relationship with water management as a whole, through a structure of water governance from the commons. And its model with great capacity for replicability and adaptability to the different forms of socio-political, institutional, and organization from concrete environmental realities. Something that translates into relations capacity. Okay, for understand this project or this proposal, it's important to me to highlight at least 2 feminist theory authors to understand the process that has led to OIT, together with the proposals around the commons. Mainly, Silvia Lergil and Amaya Pérez Orozco. The first is a feminist philosopher, and the second is an economist from feminism. And Laval Dardot and their proposal of commons as a principle, as a framework of reference. Why do I highlight them? When I did my doctoral thesis research on remunicipalization in Terrassa, these authors were the ones who served to analyze and understand the scope of the process that culminated in the creation of the OIT. Because I could observe the existence of the tension between capital and life, here, proposed by feminist authors, and how this tension was resolved with the commons theory through the remunicipalization process. And the fact, the commons implicitly carry the culture of social and environmental care. It's important, this aspect. And the fact, commoning, the action, is an action of extraction from the market to what communities consider to be essential for life. That is why the commons and commoning are related to the feminist epistemology proposed by the authors I cited, but among other authors and researchers or that Miriam explained before. Therefore, remunicipalization is a recovery action of water as a common good to ensure the sustainability of life. It's a very important way for this challenge. And this way, water from the common as a principle, this is a proposal of Laval and Dardot, allows changing the values and principles that organize its management and government. And the OIT is the result of this process and synthesize the debates of more than 5 years of process and seeks to translate the ontological and epistemological dimension into a proposal for a water governance model. It's a proposal that articulates social and institutional transformation with a cultural change, and it's necessary, this cultural change, because it allows its implementation in institutions, laws, and regulations. The OIT, as a proposal of democratic governance, and with as a result of this debate, this process in OIT is organized in these 3 principles based on 4 axes about water as a human right, water as a public service, water with citizen control, or efficiency and sustainability. No? From them, a first proposal was worked by the Taula del Agua. It's a social movement in Tarrasa who led this process of municipalization, and they, together with entities and social platforms in the city, working together to this proposal, to propose how the OIT could be. Part of this process was also done with the city council, and the current structure of the OIT emerged from this process. Okay, we can see Taiwan is a public operator now in city, the citizens, and the city council. And all these organized around or throughout to Observatory del Agua, OIT. Okay, in the beginning there were more working groups. That it's a basic structure in the OIT and daily working. It's working groups. In the beginning there were more working groups, but this year they have been reformulated and regrouped. This is part of the process of progress and adaptation to daily reality and to the dynamics and rhythms of work. Now there are only 4 that the water footprint, European funds and circular economy, social control and transparency and indicators, benchmarking, and human right to water and social justice, and the taste of water and quality here. These groups have different levels of relationships with the operators, Taiwan, the city council, and the other social actors. For example, the water footprint and circular economy have a good relationship and communication channels with Taiwan, with whom they have a doctoral study on network modeling through the university, Polytechnic University of Catalonia, UPC. Human Right to Water and Social Justice Group maintains a lot of contact with the City Council due to the complexity of the aspects that are being dealt with. different areas of the Council are related, namely the environmental area and the social services. However, the Water Quality and Taste Group has requested data but doesn't maintain continuous working contact. On the other hand, a few weeks ago, there was a first meeting of the Taula Educació. It's an organization, a citizens organization working about transforming the culture about water in the city. And with this space, this Taula Educació, had a first meeting with the City Council, the company, Agua, and the OIT to coordinate the work to be done from now on to the future. The Social Control and Transparency Group has not yet any official meetings as a group, neither with the company nor with the City Council. The contacts have always been to stop concrete things with the direction of the environmental area. A meeting has already been scheduled to prepare together, OIT, the working groups, Taiwan, and the City Council to do a work plan, establish discussions, and follow-up meetings. It's a big step straight because I think it's a good thing, this aspect. Finally, I think it's important to know that the key element of the OIT is work at different levels. Okay, with the citizens and the administration for the definition of policies, but also internally in a continuous process of balance to advance in its consolidation and improvements. Given with this, OIT gives a dynamic model of work in institution dimension. Okay, and it's something new. For this reason, the next aspects to work on are to improve the working mechanism, the communication channels, and therefore the structures, so that it can be truly networked and can act as a transmission belt and connection space in the services government. This name, as a governmental survey, it's so particularly and so vinculated with this remodulation and the structure of the service in process of Terrassa and cultural part of the proposal as a concept. Services government as a concept, not only a tool. Okay, all of these have contains many potentialities because it has strategic elements at the cultural level and at the technical practical level. In the cultural level, we can observe with a relationship based on the awarenesses of interdependence, the ecosystems that facilitate the generation of territory understood as a space of relationships that materialize in a space of life, social and ecological systems. This means, the second row, this means that common urban water cannot be subtracted or treated in a way that is disconnected from these ecosystems. This allows unifying the urban water cycle with the integral water cycle. And finally, water as a common is unalienable from the community. From the community is the people. Okay, this is the basis of the participatory government model linked to the human right to water as a collective right, and therefore people must be able to be part of the decision-making processes. These aspects take us the technical practical level. In this practical level, in which we find the following potentialities. the high replicability capacity due to its adaptive nature because it's always created from the realities and organizational systems of its place, has the ability to create and work on public policy proposals that start from the specific needs of the territories, from collaborative work methodologies and dynamics, and it allows, in fact, needs to combine geographic and institutional scales and levels. Therefore, it's a work that starts from the local space but works in this mesospace. In the Catalan case, the competencies of Catalonia in water, that the Catalan Water Agency, ACA, and has related to those of the municipalities in these hypothetical spaces of observatories. This allows, for example, that it be a space for work and development of new rules and regulations, facilitates the inflection between the urban water cycle and the integral water cycle, also the preparation of proposals and detection of needs. And for this reason, it allows the development of public policies arising from the needs and concerns of local actors, which results in a high level of adaptability. In conclusion, I think it's important 5 points. 6. The first, that it's important to highlight the high replicability or its inherent adaptive capacity. The second, that the decision making is creating and not just voting on approving. It's a process. As has been said, it's a model that has the capacity to create and work on public policy proposals that are based on the specific needs of the territories and their inhabitants. And it is a space in which different scales and geographic and institutional levels can meet to work, therefore also putting in dialogue different levels of competencies and laws. Finally, this translates into the substantive improvement of the general governance and water use frameworks, and is for all the above the scope of the potential of the OIT proposal in historical moment of inflection, such as the current one, marked by the tendency or to polarization, climate change, centralization, financialization, authoritarianism, and extractivism, is important to deepen in models such as the one presented by the OIT, because it allows ensuring access to water from ecological and social sustainability and advancing in models of ecological and social transition. Okay, I have presented the most remarkable and useful things focused on the topic of the roundtable, challenge of the future. There is much work still to be done, and it's a path full of difficulties and contradictions daily. It's all for me, for my part, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edurne, for your kind presentation on the case of Terrassa. We moved from the international level to regional and, in this case, a local level scale in order to understand what happens when we apply certain principles and certain approaches in the local context. Now let's move to the next part of this session. I just realized that I didn't present myself. I'm Marsa Torres, a researcher from Open University of Catalonia. And now I invite you again to share with us your comments, your thoughts, your suggestions via chat. Also, as you can see in this Adobe Connect platform, you can also raise your hand and share your questions also through your voice. And yes, Edurne, you can turn off your sharing of a screen. I think okay. So probably you have already done it. Okay, perfect. Um, I see here a question. Yeah, one first approach from Pedro. He wanted to share the 5 points that he proposed in the central act of the Water Day of Water. Maybe before going to this topic, I had a couple of questions for you all, if you want to address them. The first one is that this roundtable is about future and how water management models should look like in the future. And one quick question in these times is, what role is water playing in current ecological transitions and societal transitions, from the official transitions such as the Green New Deal, the Next Generation in Europe, to the transitions that are more proposed by the grassroots, such as socio-ecological proposals? What do you think that which role is playing water in these different transitions that will be clearly important in the near future and also in the midterm? And what will be your proposals in this regard? So, if anyone wants to start. Yes, Pedro.
Well, I have expressed this general approach that I think we need to assume. For me, water is finally is one of the main references with respect to democratic governance, as I said. And from my point of view, democratic governance in front of face to the main global challenges need at the same time a global governance approach based on human rights. This is my point of view. Of course, in the case of water, at the same time, is a very local and territorial and social topic, because water is the reason, because people has settled in a space, in a concrete space, is because there was water there, water enough and water, safe drinking water and so on. No, so for me this is the reason, also because water, society and environment are so deeply, so closely involved, no, and related. So for this reason, at the same time, we need this global approach, this global democracy, this global water governance approach, human rights approach. We need to build, as you said before, it was. I think you have made excellent presentations. We need to build local democracy and very strong participative approach for managing water, and closely related with the sustainability of aquatic ecosystems. No, so this is, from my point of view, is the basic issues. And of course, as I insist, in order to deal with a so complex and so vital question as is water management, we need to think on ethical principles. It's not just offer and supply and demand relationship so simple. It doesn't work for so complex question. So we need democracy in this sense, need to be based on ethical priorities and ethical criteria, because it is not the same criteria to deal with human rights that to deal with, for instance, even so important public priorities, no? Or with an important issue that is economic development. So in this sense, this complexity needs an order, a categorization of principles, of priorities, and different criteria for dealing with the different and substantive difference between one category, ethical category, and others. These more or less are the questions that must preside, from my point of view, the future related with water management.
Miriam and Edurne, I don't know whether you want to address this question. Yes, Miriam.
Yeah, I agree with what Pedro said. Maybe I think in water is transversal to many other aspects of this ecological transition, such that there are points, link and nexus with energy and with food and with other aspects of this socio-ecological transition, and also is the only well, is the last I would say the only aspect which has not been financialized, but that's not true, because it is already in the financial market, but this is still not really extended around the world, and I think this is an important aspect and a key role in this socio-ecological transition, because it's the only anchor, like one aspect which is linked still into the physical market, and we need to maintain it this way, because I think it reminds us, and also like the resistance of water has been very strong around the world, so it needs to help us to maintain this biophysical market, not to give all the commons into the market, and to maintain them linked to the territory to help us relocate it. And I think water is an example, could serve as an example of that, and also the global justice movement is an example which has been going on for a long time, since the early 2000s, and this can help us also to work locally and both globally to address these socio-ecological transitions.
Perfect. Thank you, Miriam, for your insights. Edurne, I don't know whether you want to add. Yes, please.
Well, I agree with interventions. I only can afford some puntualization, with the ethical principles in this sense, to understand commons as a principle that articulates with capacity to articulate these ethics principles, space, gender, democracy, and sustainability. It is related with local dimension, as institutional dimension is the municipalities, the local governments, and the municipalism, because I think municipalism or local governments understanding that as a network, in the points in the network, in the structure of the network, not isolated or hierarchic structures. I think it's related with others populations, cities, and anything, but because this structure it allows roots in the territory and ensures control over the essential elements for life. I think it's the modal point and a structural point that when I did my thesis, it's the thema, the topic of the thesis, I think it's essential, this point, and because in this level you can articulate to the other levels.
Thank you, Edurne, and all for your first round of explanations. I will move towards the database that was to be presented by Satoko. as you mentioned, Miriam and I mentioned before, they reported these 300 cases of water remunicipalizations. Do you consider this a trend? And which kind of enables and barriers do you think that this kind of processes are facing? I know that the question is very broad, but maybe if you could give some examples of barriers and enables of these kind of processes, and also whether this trend, do you think that will be slowed down in the future or will accelerate somehow or in some regions?
It's it's a difficult question to ask from a global perspective. I can talk about from the Catalan perspective and maybe some local perspective in different places around the world. But I think so. 300 cases of remunicipalization is a big number because it is. It's difficult to imagine how difficult it is to remunicipalize a city, but for so many years since the 80s, the neoliberal imaginary has been has been spreading all around the world. First from the IMF and the financial international institutions, but little by little, this neoliberal approach has been integrated in all the laws, or most of the laws around the world. In some places, with more emphasis and with more presence, and in other places with not so much. And for example, in the Catalan case I mentioned, but it's important to remind that we have 28 remunicipalizations already made in Catalonia, but 40 city councils which have been brought to court because of remunicipalizing or having a public water service. This is not something. This is not an isolated case. For example, in Chile, which is the country which has the most the most privatizing laws for water. I hope this is understandable. There was an accident 2 years ago. In Chile, also Suez manages a big part of the water systems through Aguas Andinas, which is a subsidiary, and in Osorno, which is a city of Chile, there was an accident 2 years ago, and half of the city was without water supply for 1 week, 3-4 days. They had to bring trucks with water because there was a spill of oil in the tanks. This made that the city of Osorno include in the referendum that they made last year a question about water municipalization in the city. Since there was this accident, they asked all the citizens if they wanted public water and to finalize the contract with ESAL, which is the subsidiary of Aguas Andinas, which belongs to Suez, that manages the water there. The result was yes. About more than 80% of the citizens voted yes. And the response from ESAL and from Suez, Spain, was to challenge or threaten the Chilean government and threaten them that if they finish the contract with ESAL, they will bring the government to ISDS courts, these mechanisms of to protect the foreign investors. So the result is that at the moment the contract has not been finished, and also ESAL, so Suez, put into the market the company. So they are trying to sell it. So this is just an example of what is also happening in Catalonia at a local scale. But the result is that when the municipalizations processes start, what we find is this power imbalance between a small city or even a whole government against the power of a transnational, which have really huge juridical services. So this needs to be addressed from local to global policies and to state policies, protecting this human right to water and banning privatization to happen, or changing laws to make it easier for little cities or medium cities or even big cities to remunicipalize and get back the control of their water services.
Thank you, Miriam, to show us your experience here in Catalonia, but also an experience on the barriers and the difficulties to move towards this process of remunicipalization through the case of Chile. Edurne, I don't know whether you want to add anything.
Sí.
Thank you.
Okay, a reflection. Laws are created from commoditated approach. So actual laws, no, came from a concrete vision, concrete principles, and concrete values around about the water or around the water or with the water. No, it's for this it's important to understand that this actual model was emerged, no, in a particular approach, no, with in historical moment, no, and this historical moment, this approach, it's marking, or it's marking, no, the framework, the actual laws, no, in that the water is a commodity and the service it's the same thing that a company. When the service is not a company, but in the imaginary, in the cosmovision of the people in general, not only companies and actors, of the people. Sometimes, a lot of times, you can show that the people is the service is the company, and it's a particular framework that was emerged in a concrete moment, in historical moment, no. Therefore, it's important to create proposals of government and the management of the water with these democratic and participated models. It's important to understand that it's a simultaneous movement, no? The working imaginary spheres, no? The cultural change with the tension with this technical, practical change, no? To and create these spaces to work together, the different actors, the administration, institutions, public operators, social actors, no, to transform these institutions, the conception of the service and the structure of the service and the water in general, not only the service, it's how it's conceived water integral cycle. No? It's a topic that it's a it's all debate, open debate, I think. And with this work, we can change the laws and the approach of the new laws. These laws based on the values of these ethical principles that we can comment now of the social ecological sustainability, human right to water, gender, reciprocity, it's resilience. But I think it's hard work, but I think we are working in this now, and it's important to have that the double dimension, simultaneous double dimension.
very related to what you are commenting right now. It's a question by Fabian Lechtenberg. I'm sorry if I haven't pronounced well your surname. Besides, he points out, besides the social benefits of remunicipalization that you highlighted in the case of Terrassa, could you comment on the economic and environmental impacts? So which kind of impacts derived from, maybe you can give a brief glimpse on that, not just the social dimension, but also the economic and the environmental benefits in this case.
Okay, in economics, it's not important, I think. It's more in how the management of water it's now, with more responsibility, with more transparency, with different criteria about how to use the water, how to implement technology. It's important in this part. When Miriam talked about Eco-Feminism and the situated knowledge, no, with the technology, it's not neutral, no, and when the management of the service is public with criteria of ethical principles and criteria of the sustainability and accessibility for the people, well, the technology must to change. And in these things, I think that from Taiwan, there are more changes in these lines or in these lines of action. But economical in Terrassa, I don't know. Bueno, I don't think, because for the usuary, nothing changed visible. Change the principles, it changed all the machinery, all the engineering that are besides, but not in the public sphere, or not a lot at the moment.
I don't know whether Miriam or Pedro want to add anything else. Yes, thank you, Pedro.
Well, with respect to economics, usually the first thing is, what do we mean by economics? No, for me there is a dangerous question with respect to economic issues if we talk about the most vulnerable people. So the consequences on economics for the most vulnerable people is terrible, because they are out of the possibility of being recognized as citizens. They are clients. So if they are clients, they are excluded. Poor clients, they are excluded for any kind of right. So for me, it is a consequence, an economic, through the economics, a direct consequence, and very important, just social and justice and other ethical issues around, but through the economic impact. The other question that we must take into account is, usually when we talk about economics and privatization and so on, we're talking about efficiency. We're thinking about efficiency, improving efficiency, incentivizing efficiency through concurrence, through the competence among different actors and so on. But in this case, it's not true. It's just not possible, because we are facing a natural monopoly. In any case, even if it is in public hands or in private hands, there is no competence, you say, competence on the market, but for the market. And in the faculties, in the economics faculties, we are explaining, in fact, that this kind of competency is not efficient. So we have, in this sense, for me, if we are interested, at least something that is interesting, is not the most important, but is important about efficiency and in the development and the management of water services. The best incentive for improving efficiency is the transparency. For me, it's benchmarking. It's a very transparent and the possibility that citizens, that are the main actors in this issue, have the possibility to contrast how it is being managed, their services in their community or in their city, their municipality, and what about other municipalities, similar municipalities. So to have clear information, transparency, for me is the key issue for incentivizing the improving efficiency. That is an important issue, it's not the most important, no? And if we talk about economy, finally, I insist in something. We have different interesting questions, not just in what, in general, that market or the logic of market give for incentivizing efficiency and some things like that. But if we go into the last step in which we are evolving, that is the speculative logic, then we have another logic for economics, and it's a logic that very often is against even the logic of the whole economy, no? Because the actors that dominates absolutely this logic are the most powerful financial actors, and not properly the actors that are working in the economy. Because in the economy we have, for instance, small entrepreneurs, we have peasants, we have irrigators, we have small companies and so on, that are out of the possibility and out of the space of the speculative markets. No? So in this sense, is not just the most vulnerable in the sense of human rights, but even the economy is in danger, is at risk at present in front of this kind of speculative approaches that we are beginning to see when water is coming into the future markets in Wall Street. That can be expanded, for instance, in Spain at present. No? So for me, these are economic elements to reflect. But I agree with Edurne. For me, I used to say in the last time something that I think is important to change the mind. Why do we not talk about economy for the public health system? We talk about efficacy, we talk about efficiency also, but we don't talk about how what benefit we are obtaining. No, we are looking at others and we say, well, Germans are working better than us, we can improve this service, but the logic of the economic is we need is a public event, is a public reality, and the logic, the economic logic, is a public economic challenge. It's not, in this sense, it's not the market challenge. So for me, it's important to know, but at present we are convinced because we have been introduced and we have no other possibility apparently in this context of being competitive with water. And what about benefits? And what about the gap, the financial gap? I don't hear about financial gap in public health system. Why do we have this financial gap about water and sanitation services? What is inside our head, our way of thinking, you know? So I think we must change. We need the economy. We need to be efficient. We need, but not in a competitive market on this question, because we have not market. We are at present in a natural monopoly, and the big issues are of public interest for everybody, and not for the one who can pay or not, and so on, so on, so on. So I think it's good to think on economics, but from this field of public economics, public goods, and so on.
Thank you very much for raising these interesting points, Pedro. I don't know whether Edurne was shaking or, yeah, just to complement.
Because I remember another aspect. when I put it in the chat that there are more possibilities around the economics with the local dimension, practical dimension, material dimension, and in the with the utilities and the companies that produce and commerce with these utilities. You can contract local companies, or you can contract cooperatives and strengthen with these actions the social and solidarity economies. And with this way you can getting better the local economy and reverting to it's a way to build a community network. It's also it only this aspect that before I forget it.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know that Miriam wants to add anything else. Otherwise, I will change. Yes. Yeah.
Very short. I just wanted to add a couple of facts because I share the approach that Pedro and Edurne said, but we also have examples from different municipalizations, like Valladolid, for example, from the economical perspective, which, as Pedro said, needs to include many other aspects, not only the economic value, the money, but the facts are that with 3 years of remunicipalization, the investment that the city council has made is bigger than the one made in 20 years of privatization. So during privatization, they invested 27 million of euros in the water system, and after municipalization, in 3 years, they have invested 31 million. So there is from the economical perspective, from the money, the fact that a private company stopped taking profit from the water management automatically produces money that can be used to revert into the system in the form of investments, and to help us address these other challenges that we have been talking about, like climate change or the guaranteed human right to water and sanitation. And also in Terrassa during COVID, they made this first, they made a part of the bill which was for free for all the citizens in the city, to address COVID and to have water access guaranteed for all. So there are these specific policies from the economical wide perspective. And also we have the example of Paris, that from the environmental point of view, when they were municipalized, they started doing politics with agriculture up in the river, in the upper part of the river, to promote the use of ecological and organic pesticides, fertilizers, in order not to contaminate the water of the river, which was the supply of the city. So it is possible, when you have municipalization, to implement policies that help the environment within this integral water cycle we were talking about.
Definitely, this is a key question that probably will be developed through the Congress. Which kind of water management models are pushing towards more environmental management attitudes and models? Another question I had for you all is, in this new future for water, which kind of relationships do you think that we should frame between the academia, activists, and probably also the policy domains? Whether you have any inspiring examples. I think that Miriam talked about situated knowledge. Also, Pedro has a career going from the research or the academic domain towards also the activist domain, and now in the UN. And I think that these roles are complementing each other and in parallel. So whether you have any thoughts on that, on these new ways of producing knowledge for the future of water.
Well, for me, it's very important. It's very interesting because perhaps it's the space where I have worked the most. No, but I think we can get very interesting progress building a dialogue between activism, university or research and experts milieu, and social movements, of course. No, but I don't want to idealize, no, to make an ideal on the expectation with respect to university or this kind of spaces, no, because there are strong influences or strong conditions, no, for the researchers, for the professors and so on, from the economic powers, no, and institutional powers. But it's true that, especially from the public university, more independent, with more independence, as is my privilege, for instance, as professor, I can do as I want, and I have some incentives for being in the side of the poor, but I'm not obliged, no. And for me, this relationship is an ethical element to introduce and to deal and to fight for it in the experts milieu, because we have the privilege to have studied. Because in most cases, because we have received from the whole society this privilege. So to ask for being ethical and to be to make the priority, to put the priority on the service to the community, to the society, I think is a relevant issue to work for it in this space. But at the same time, for me, it's very important that the part of the university or the part of the expert milieu is involved, is under the commitment with social movements, is very important, because that gives to the movement the strength of the argument, of the alternatives, not just to have right in the things they ask, no, we ask, but we have also reason, rationality, technical capacities. So I remember, and I stop with this small history. When we were at the beginning of the New Water Culture Foundation, at the beginning we were, I remember, with my van, I gather some colleagues, no, from hydrogeologists, some from Laos, a lot of from engineering, from economics, and we went to the country, no, to the Pyrenees, to visit and to meet the people in small towns under the threat of a big dam that would be flooded, the valley and so on. And I remember several times to receive this message from the people after the meeting. No, it was in the radio station for the locality, you know, for the region. Everyone was hearing what happened because the university came to the region, came to the village. You know, it's so important. And I said, no, we are not the university. We are just some professors from the no, you are the university. We need the university. This was the feeling. And at the end of the meeting, some people came to me and several times, not just one time, said, Pedro, it was so important that you said. And why? Now, because we thought, we were convinced that it was just we had justice with us, with the things we were talking for, we are asking for. But now we know also what we have reasons, we are right. No, so, teníamos derecho, ahora sabemos que tenemos razón. So it's something incredible, no? But it's true. It's true. For many people, suddenly the actors from the expert sector arrives and give reasons, alternatives, and technical arguments for the positions of the people. And so that will strengthen a lot of this kind of fights and collective fights. I think is important.
Thank you very much. I think that your anecdote showed clearly this kind of relationships and legitimacies and strengths of collaborations. We have just a couple of minutes to finish. Miriam and Edurne, if you want to add, yes, please.
Yes. Okay. I start with two questions, but not with answers. The researchers were only in the university, and the other question is the value of the different knowledge. No, that are deep topics in the deep of the question that you planted. And but going to concretely things, I think that in action research, it's a good methodology. These tools, but for to do research with actors and with roles more reciprocity, equality, equally. Right. But there are a lot of difficulties more besides of the methodology. It's where these practices can be, in the universities or in other spaces, and the access to the topics with interest to be funded or financed or with economic sources. It's a handicap, because there are a lot of needs with actors, but it's not easy to access to economic resources to do this research, And finally, sometimes the resultant knowledge of this research is not well received for part of the university, the community of the university. It's like it's not scientific at all. It's not really scientific. You must explain, to demonstrate more than others' research, maybe, And but with all those difficulties and all of these contradictions, I think it's important strength these kinds of collaboration, strength the spaces on these collaborations can be, and fight as we are talking with water, was fighting for that this knowledge from the social actors and the needs that are in the reality, in the society. Because I think as a social scientist, when you study problems or conflicts, social problems or social conflicts, without the actors, it's when it's strange. You lose the sense that you research, I think.
Thank you, Edurne, for sharing also your experience and the challenges that you have encountered also in practice. And Penny, maybe some concluding remarks, Miriam, if you want to share anything else, yeah.
Yes, just more questions. I mean, I think the audience here is especially interesting to address this question. Thank you, Matt, because it's important from the scientific community and the university to start thinking how to relate to the citizens and to to the questions and the challenges that we have as a society. For example, the last report from the UNESCO last year about water resources remarked water resources and climate change remarked participation as one of the key issues to address the climate change challenge. No? And it's important to find these spaces that Pedro and Edurne were talking about and to imagine how to promote them between the scientific community and the citizen and the civil society organization in order to ask the questions together that can bring us to answers for the commons. Because the financing of the project is one of the scientific projects is one issue, but we need to make sure the questions that we are addressing are for the commons. And just to remind this tension between technification and participation that I talked about during the presentation and that we develop a little bit more in the project, because there is indeed a tension between the technification of the discourse and the expert discourse and the possibility of the citizens to participate, and we need to address this gap and to develop methodologies and innovative ways that allow us to work together, even though we have this gap. For example, in our experience in Engineering Without Borders, what we found when applying technologies in communities and making it work, the difficulty was not the technology. The difficulty was the capacitation with the community in order to make this technology work. So we need to think about how we make this capacitation in both directions, from the university to the citizens and from the citizens to the university, and how we create these spaces of collaboration.
So thank you very much for your excellent contributions. Thank you, Edurne, Bage, Pedro Rojo, Miriam Planas, but also Maud Barlow, that she sent us her video. She couldn't stay during the interesting debate, but at least we took her knowledge and her points. And now I invite you to follow in the international conference in the next sessions that will develop during this morning. And thank you all participants also for being here with us, for providing some small comments and questions. And goodbye to all. Have a nice day in the Congress.
Thank you, Matt,
Bye-bye.
for the facilitation.
Thank you and bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye,
you,
bye.
Pedro. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Edurne. Thank you, Mar. And we move a little break and we start with the poster session at 12. Thank you all.